Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the Forward Thinking series today, a special look at the election, an historic election, particularly for women getting elected to federal office. And we're going to talk about that with a great champion of our industry, Senator Amy Klobuchar. She'll be here in just a few minutes. Before we do that, I do want to say thank you to our presenting sponsor, Wells Fargo. Without folks like Wells Fargo making this possible, we would not be able to bring you this type of programming and this type of information. So a great thanks to Wells Fargo and all that they do to support not only Forward for women, but many of the activities that we take on at the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So thanks to them. Look, I'm going to go ahead and set the stage for Senator Klobuchar. Again, she is running a few minutes late because she's literally on the floor of the U.S. Senate right now, working on our behalf. We certainly thank her for that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the elections and kind of where we are now, a full 2 weeks after Election Day, 2 weeks in one day. And then we'll get right into the discussion with Senator Klobuchar. First of all, the Vice President-elect, obviously no secret, is a woman. First time ever in our history, and a woman of color. We're going to hear some discussion about that today. We also have a record number of women in Congress. In fact, more than a quarter of all members of the U.S. Congress are now women, and especially a record number for Republican women who were very successful during this last election cycle. And before, again, we go to Senator Klobuchar, I want to talk about where we are with the election. So you have two sides, Republican and Democrat, left and right, that ideologically are probably further apart than ever before. And that's problematic, no question about it. But you have an electorate that is split down the middle, perhaps closer than anything we've ever seen before, which hopefully creates the idea among all of our elected officials that now is the time to work together. The American people are split, so let's bring them together. And if you look at these election results, it's absolutely stunning how equally divided this country is right now. If you look at the presidential race in the states of Arizona and in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Georgia, and if you were to flip about 80,000 votes, Donald Trump would get reelected. That's how close it is. But he didn't get reelected. Joe Biden did, and he will be the next president of the United States. If you look at the U.S. Senate and the situation that's happening there, there's a possibility that you could potentially have a 50-50 Senate equally divided between Republicans and Democrats. Now, why is that taking place? Here we are 2 weeks after the election. Well, it all focuses on the state of Georgia. And I'll give you a little bit of history on this as we have a few minutes until Senator Klobuchar gets here. The state of Georgia is unique in that to win a statewide race in Georgia, you've got to have 50% of the vote plus one vote. So you must have a majority. Since the 1980s, we've had statewide runoffs when someone does not reach 50%. In fact, there have been 8 statewide runoffs. And I'll get to that in just a second about what has happened to those runoffs. But what's unique in this particular situation is you have not one, but 2 U.S. senators on the ballot at the same time, but in very different races. So Senator Kelly Loeffler was never elected to the Senate. She was appointed by the governor because Senator Isaacson had to step down for health reasons. And so state law says that if you get appointed, the next time there's a general election, you're going to be on the ballot. But it's not a normal election where you have a Republican primary and a Democrat primary. It's what you would call a jungle election. And so in that particular case, there were 20 people on the ballot. So obviously none of those are going to get 50%. The other race between incumbent Senator David Perdue and John Ossoff was a traditional Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian race. And Senator Perdue fell short of the 50%. He's ahead by about 2.5%. So you've got 2 elections in Georgia that are taking place in early January. There's a 9-week spread between the original election and the runoff. And those will decide who has control of the Senate, because if Democrats win both, it's a 50-50 Senate. And of course, the tiebreaker would be Vice President-elect Harris. If the Republicans win either one of those 2, then the Republicans will maintain majority. And quickly in the House of Representatives, it will be about as close as you've ever seen it in our lifetime. The Democrats will maintain control, and that spread will be somewhere probably between about 10 and 12 seats difference between the 2 parties. So again, close presidential election, very close U.S. Senate election that may come down 50-50 one way or the other, and a House of Representatives is split by probably a dozen or fewer seats. So with all of that as kind of the backdrop to where we are in America today, we are very excited to have joining us Senator Amy Klobuchar. She has been a champion for our industry really since the day that she came into office way back in 2007, which I guess, Senator, after a year like 2020, that probably seems more than a lifetime ago, 2007. But we're very excited that you're here with us today. Excited for your role in the U.S. Senate. What we'd like to do is give you an opportunity to make some statements, and then we'll have a few questions after that.
Well, thanks so much, Chip. I was interested in hearing your calm recitation of the races in Georgia. It was kind of amusing. Meanwhile, it doesn't always feel so calm every day over in the Senate, but I am so excited to talk to all of you, and especially your focus on forward thinking, which is completely where I am right now, and also the impact of women in the 2020 elections, which was huge. When you look at one, the turnout, 160 million Americans voted. Two, the number of women that have been elected over the years to Congress, there's been a huge change. And then three, the number of women in your industry that work hard every single day in leadership positions, of course, everywhere, more and more these days. And then, of course, the frontline workers who are really taking the lead in a very, very difficult situation in our country. So I liked what Joe Biden said the night that he was declared the president-elect by many news organizations, including Fox News, when he said that he wants the grim era of demonization must end, which I think has really been contributing to just this lack of a moral compass right now in the last few years for leadership in Washington, and the kind of soul crunching gridlock that we see all the time. And especially when we're in the middle of this pandemic, we just don't have time to mess around. I liked when he said, look, I've lost elections before. I know it's disappointing. He spoke directly to supporters of the president, and he said, I'll give you a chance if you give me a chance. And that's how I've always viewed my role as a public servant. And I think it's really important we all do the same, regardless of where we come down politically right now for our country, because we already had a lot of headwinds with global competition and the like before the pandemic. And right now we have to pull through this so we get out on the other end. And as you know, we're having a spike right now, which is not good for the tourism industry. I just noted this in a Commerce Committee hearing today. Every senator was there on Commerce, which, by the way, is 1/4 of the US Senate. 25 people. So I was able to make the case for a bill that Senator Blunt and I had passed to look at the economic input, the $450 billion in losses. And of course, right now, as we speak, I was just texting back and forth with Senator Cornyn, as a number of us would really like to see a package by the end of the year. So what do we know? We know that 4 out of 10 hotel employees are still not working. 2/3 of the hotels remain at or below 50% capacity. We also know that the hospitality industry has incurred a lot of expenses, just trying to do everything to keep people safe. I have had my own experience with this. I was able, when it was at a bit of a lull this summer, to go with my husband out west to some of our national parks and stayed at a number of hotels, or actually the whole time, small, big, and medium, and saw all the work that was being done to keep people safe, from little bed and breakfasts with their food in the boxes to bigger hotels with the plastic bags on the doors and everything else that you are doing. And I know that a lot of my colleagues have had the same experience. That's why we are working so hard on a number of things. I mentioned the smaller bill that passed out of the Commerce Committee with Blunt, but I think the big deal thing would be funding for the tourism industry, in particular with targeted relief to the ones that are hit the most. And that to me are restaurants, hotels, lodging, stages. I lead a bill with Senator Cornyn, which is related to hotels because, first of all, some of them have some of the stages, but we can't let the music die, and we can't let our theater die. And it really bothers me what's been going on. As I've said many times, You can't, I said to our whole Democratic caucus on a call yesterday, you can't go to a mosh pit in the middle of a pandemic, to which Senator Durbin texted me back, how many mosh pits do you have in Minnesota? Well, I guess he doesn't know about First Avenue, Prince, but also some of our smaller venues. We did bring the world Bob Dylan, let us remember. Anyway, so I just think this whole area of tourism, and I've been working with Senator Cortez Masto and Senator Blunt, Senator Kramer on the sustaining tourism enterprises during the COVID pandemic, the STEP Act, that would be really helpful to grants to support the tourism industry. Additional funding. I joined Senator Cortez Masto, obviously being from Nevada, happened to spend a lot of time there in the last year, maybe related to running for president. So I know how important that is. And we're just going to keep pushing that it's not one size fits all. The tech industry, man, they are doing fine. Amazon, we have like a couple $1 trillion companies right now. And so when we look at the relief, I think it needs to be targeted. The overall picture as we get to the day after tomorrow, as long as we can keep these businesses alive through the time when we get a vaccine, and of course, really promising news on that. And all of this is going to be distribution and the cold storage, which of course, Minnesota is really cold. I know they can't just put it in a snowbank, but I'm well aware of those issues. And so we really want to get that vaccine out. And that's going to be a lot that the president-elect, of course, with this coronavirus task force he just put together that they're working on. But we also have Brand USA as we get to the day after tomorrow. We know how important that is. And last year, Brand USA, which allows our country to advertise in other countries with actually no taxpayer monies. It's a combination of visa fees and private money. It generated $4.1 billion in incremental visitor spending before this pandemic. And that is a marketing return on investment of 32 to 1. Really, really high priority for the tourism industry. And so we're going to keep that up. So those are some of the things on my mind right now. We also know how important international tourism is to even not just the big towns, although it's important there, and the synergistic effect of how much money people spend, not just in hotels and restaurants, but where they go do other stuff too. And so we need to bring that back once we open up. Last thing I want to say before I take some questions from Chip is just how important women are in your industry and overall. So if you feel sometimes like you're around a lot of men in your business, depending on what your part of the industry is, you may be, try the US Senate. I remember being on the Trevor Noah show a few years ago. And back then we only had we had, when I first started in the Senate, we had 16 women in the Senate. They called us the Sweet 16 out of 100. And now we're, by the way, up to 26. And sometime in the middle there, where I think we were around 24, I was on the Trevor Noah show. And I noted to him that in the history of the Senate, there'd been over 2,000 men and something like 50 women, half of them being there now, just to give you a sense of history. And he said, if a nightclub had numbers that bad, they would shut it down. So we have been seeing change in the Senate and the House, which is exciting. And with the elevation of Kamala Harris to Vice President of the United States, I think that's going to make people really look from around the world that women can have a job in this great country of ours. And we've seen other women lead across the world. And that has always changed the mix-up. When you see the makeup, when you see people in leadership roles, it makes other girls and boys and everyone think, okay, this is possible. So I really think it helps everyone. Women now lead 37 Fortune 500 companies. That's quite a change. And we're just seeing change all over the business world as well as the world of government. So with that, I am looking very forward to answering your questions, Chip, but thank you for having me and taking me out of the Senate for a little bit, back to my apartment so I could do the Zoom call and my bookshelf. So thank you.
It's the least we could do. And your analogy on the nightclub reminded me that's kind of what it felt like when I was in college, that exact scenario of the number of men to women. Look, you hit on so many important topics, and I think it really highlights kind of the ecosystem that hotels find ourselves in. Is that a lot of people would like to travel right now, and maybe they think it's great and safe to go to a hotel, but they think, okay, if I get there, am I going to be able to go to a restaurant? Can I go to a theater? Can I do the things I want to do? And that whole ecosystem is crashing right now. And I know
Right.
we'll talk more about that in just a second. But look, you came from being a county attorney in Minnesota and going to the U.S. Senate. Two questions. I want to kind of mix these together if I can. First, what made you do that? Like, what was the driving force that said, hey, I want to get into this business that I know is going to be pretty tough? And then second, when you found yourself out there on the campaign trail this year, running for president of the United States, what did that feel like?
Well, you know what drove me actually to get involved in public service? I've been in the private sector, partner at law firm, represented private companies and a number of areas, including telecom. Actually, represented MCI was one of my biggest clients back when they were getting into the competing with AT&T, and did a little work every so often in the tourism area. And so for me, I had this experience when I was actually not in office. I was in the private sector, and our daughter was born, and we were really excited, but she ended up being really sick. She couldn't swallow. And at the time, they had a rule that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. And I literally had no sleep. She was having all these x-rays. They didn't know if she had a tumor. She was in intensive care. And they just kicked me out of the hospital in 24 hours. And they send me all these back with all these like videos about breastfeeding. I was like, what? And it was a nightmare. And we found some room nearby and had to keep going back. And finally, I had said to my husband, you know, when this is done, I just don't think this is right. And I found out that across the country, a few states, including Republican governor in New Jersey, Christy Todd Whitman, had taken on the issue. And so I, as a private citizen, went to the legislature and got one of the first bills passed guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And what I remember learning about the legislative experience is that there was a conference committee. The bills were a little different. No one could really act like they were against it, but they were trying to delay its effect. So I brought 6 of my pregnant friends to the conference committee. And when the legislators asked, oh, when should this take effect? They all raised their hands like this. They're like, now, instead of even waiting for the effective date, which was usually August 1st. And I think Jesse Ventura was the governor at the time. And they all said now. And that's exactly what happened. They made it take effect when it was signed into law. And so that was pretty fun. So all those pregnant women got to take advantage of it. So that was I got hooked on public service after that. And I'd managed some campaigns, and I ended up running for the DA job, which was a really great management job. I had 400 employees, did that for 8 years, and then ran for US Senate from there. And running for president was your second question, an incredible experience, of course. And one of the coolest things was the first debate with the group of us that was up there. We doubled the number of women ever in the history of America on a Democratic debate stage. And I think that people saw that we were from different parts of the country. We wore different clothes, because remember, there's usually just only one woman standing up there, like Hillary did, or Shirley Chisholm way back. And so I think and we had different ideologies. Elizabeth Warren and I don't agree on some things, and we were able to debate and make that very clear. And I thought that was really important for the country to see. And I think you all know that from business, that not everyone's the same just because they're the woman in the role. And that we can debate and then be just like the guys in that way. And I think that was really important. And I really had a really good experience. I came in third in the New Hampshire primary, but then it was kind of hard to get that momentum going at that late of a date after that. But I was very honored to endorse Joe Biden. It was actually a moment of joy, but almost as joyful as when I announced in the middle of a blizzard, which was a memorable setting for anyone in the hospitality industry. Oh, you're muted, Chip. It happens to the best of us. The senators are always muted. There you go.
I do this 10 times a day. You think I get it right? Look, you still have a long time to do this again. I'm sure there'll be many more trips to New Hampshire. All right, so here we are, middle of November. Vice President-elect Harris, historic, no question about that. And I don't think anyone can dispute that it's historic. I mean, it is what it is. It's the first time it's happened. How is this going to play out both functionally inside of our federal government? I mean, what changes will having the first woman vice president mean functionally? And then aspirationally, what does that mean for our country?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think functionally she'll be the same as any modern day vice president. It was actually a Minnesota vice president, Walter Mondale, who was the vice president to Jimmy Carter and was very experienced, that kind of changed the look of the modern day vice president. Then you had Cheney and people that were very influential, and that changed. That used to be, I think there was an old quote that it wasn't worth a pot of spit or something in the past, and that's really changed. And I know Kamala will be a incredible leader in that job. And I think aspirationally, it's going to really allow kids. Here you have not just the first woman, but you have the first African-American woman, and you have the first Indian-American woman in that job. And I think that just changes the look for people around the world, where there are some countries where women have done well. I was just watching the first episode of The Crown last night, Chip, reminding of when Maggie Thatcher was the prime minister there. And you've had interesting countries like India that have had a woman leading in the past. But we just haven't had that, which is kind of ironic given a number of women we have in leadership. So I think it's good for the world. And then for those countries that don't have a lot of women in leadership, that'll make a difference too. Or Angela Merkel in Germany. There have been women leading throughout the world, but we somehow didn't get the memo in the US. So, Kamala having this job will be very important.
And thank you for reminding me that The Crown is back on. That is one of my favorite shows.
I think some of the people on this call may have watched it.
Look, I know we only have you time for one more question. We cannot thank you enough for being with us today, but more importantly, what you do for our industry. So the Biden administration is coming in. There's always that pressure of the first 100 days. I'm not sure how we came up with 100 days, but there'll be a lot of pressure to accomplish a lot right out of the gate. What do you see happening there? And then no matter what happens in the two races in Georgia, you are going to have a Senate that is almost 50-50. How do you navigate that? And what does that mean for our industry, for the country as a whole, as we move forward on a very divided Senate?
Okay, so just starting with your industry, I think that you've worked really hard to make support for your industry bipartisan. That's not true in every business area, I would say. And I think that's been really, really important. So, we make sure, I remember when I chaired that subcommittee of commerce on tourism, and I've been the co-chair of the caucus now for years. We've always done it on a bipartisan basis. Senator Blunt and I work together incredibly well. We just did a hearing together in the Rules Committee today. I think that's really important in both the House and the Senate to keep that up in divided government, in closed Senates and not closed Senates, whatever, because eventually what comes around goes around. And every single state, regardless of their political identity, sees the importance of tourism. So we have gone out of our way to make everything bipartisan, as you guys have. Super important. Secondly, our country. I just don't think we can wait anymore. I think we know that we've got to get this vaccine out. We've got to get some pandemic relief to get people through to that other side, especially the winter. I was thinking as you talk, Chip, of your industry, and I'm sure it's a little easier for the warm weather places right now. But for us, one of the reasons we could go on that 2-week vacation is, what did we do during the day? Did we go inside all the time and go to museums? No, they weren't open. Did we? We went there out west because we could go hiking and we could go biking and we could do things outside. So as I think about being in my state where I had these glamorous ideas, I was going to eat outdoors with my husband with this heater on, and it was like 10-degree wind chill. I'm like, no. Well, restaurants will try, I think, and some might be able to do that, especially in the northern part of the country. This is going to be really hard if you can't participate in the activity. So it's just one more reason that I've been making this case over and over again to get this pandemic package done by the end of the year, regardless of where the political chips fall. We just have to get it done. And I think that's what we have to think about. And then going forward, I will say that Biden's, I quoted some of his initial remarks when I started out here with all you guys. But this is not a partisan moment. It's an American moment. And he is uniquely qualified. It's one of the reasons I endorsed him to bring people together. He's always been someone who is respected by both sides of the aisle when he was in the Senate, when he was vice president. And I think that will also bode well for how we go forward.
Well, thank you for that. That's music to our ears, especially getting something done before the end of the year. If I could leave you with this one statistic, which you probably know, but you can certainly share with your colleagues. If you go back to the beginning of the pandemic until now, there are 400 hotel-related jobs every hour that are being lost.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So if we wait weeks and weeks, that just means thousands more people lose their livelihood. So,
and to wait for a new administration, as you know, the swearing in is inauguration January 20th, and then you've got to, you're going to have to get a package together, and then the money takes often a month to get out or more. It would be helpful to know it's coming. I just don't think we can wait. I think we got to get through this winter and into the spring and then into the vaccine time. I'm not going to say what date that is, but we need that. And we can always pass another package, but we need to get something to get us through this time.
Absolutely. Senator Amy Klobuchar,
Okay.
You're a champion for our industry, and thank you for all that you do for our country as well.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you
Bye-bye.
soon. Can't wait to stay in your hotels when this is over.
We look forward to that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everybody else, I do want to again thank Wells Fargo because of their sponsorship. These things are made possible. Keep in mind that these videos are available. We do put them on our website. I have to put on my glasses now. This is what a pandemic has done to me. I actually have to wear glasses now to read my notes. We will continue to have these forward thinking sessions. Our next one is going to be on December the 10th when we discuss building resilience and mental toughness in times of uncertainty. Honestly, if you were looking for a definition of uncertainty in the dictionary, it should just say 2020 pandemic. That describes it all. And then finally, circle that date on your calendar, May of 2021, where we are desperately looking forward to an in-person meeting in Chicago, the 2021 Forward event in Chicago in May of 2021. We'll have more information coming out about that. Thank you for everyone who took time out of your day to participate in this event with us. Thank you for supporting our industry. And if we at AHLA can ever do anything to help you, please do not hesitate to let us know. Have a wonderful day.